It's a beautiful morning in New York and people are having fun in Central Park. Suddenly, the crowd begins to behave strangely, repeating words, freezing in the middle of the street, or starting to walk backwards. At this point, some people start screaming, and on bench, a woman watches as her friend mutters the same phrase several times before immediately grabbing a hairpin to remove it herself. In the city center, a group of construction workers is relaxing when a body suddenly falls next to them. At first, the others think it was an accident, but soon another body falls to the ground, and when they look up, they see that all the workers on the upper floors are also coming out to get themselves to destroy yourself. One by one, they all fall to their deaths, their faces always expressionless and devoid of any emotion. Meanwhile, science teacher Elliot tells his class about the time millions of bees disappeared across the country. Student says that there will always be events that science cannot explain and that we will never fully understand, which Elliot agrees with. The rest of the students begin enthusiastically discussing the mysterious events but are interrupted when Elliot is called to an emergency staff meeting. As he makes his way to the main hall, Elliot looks into the other classrooms and sees the students looking at something on their phones in shock. When all the staff have arrived, the director explains that there is a state of emergency in city. Apparently, some terrorists have released a strange gas into Central Park that is driving people to suicide. This led to classes being canceled across the city. Teachers then return to their classrooms and inform students that they can leave on the day. Elliot leaves with his best fellow teacher Julian, whose mother is hysterical even though she is in Philadelphia and has told Julian to bring his family. Julian and his wife Alma are also invited, and Julian admits to Julian that Alma has been becoming more and more distant lately. At home, Elliot's wife, Alma, is stressed because she keeps getting calls from someone named Joey, who she doesn't want to talk to. She ignores her phone and watches the news to learn about people who continue to die in the area and how New York City is being evacuated. Soon after, Elliot arrives and the two pack up to leave town. The couple make it to train station where they find Julian with his daughter Jess. His wife is stuck in traffic at Princeton and takes the next train. A reporter on the TV station TV reported that the autopsy found naturally occurring toxins. Julian makes a comment about marital problems, which upsets Alma, who doesn't want her intimate details revealed in this way. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia's Rittenhouse Park, a police officer struggles to control the traffic jam. As the wind blows through the trees in the park, most people suddenly freeze, and the police officer uses his weapon to destroy himself. Then the taxi driver gets out, grabs pistol, and does the same thing. The gun is then picked up by a woman who also uses it to get things done. Back to Elliot's group, they're on the train and Alma finally answers Joey's call to tell him to stop calling her because they only shared dessert and it doesn't mean anything. At this point, Joey informs them that this event is also happening in Philadelphia. And soon most people start calling from friends and relatives telling them that other cities such as Philadelphia, are also happening. Boston are affected. The train finally stops in Pennsylvania and workers inform the passengers that this is the last stop as all train service has been suspended. Additionally, number has lost all communication and therefore cannot help. Since there is a small rural town nearby, the crowd ends up at the restaurant. A woman receives a video from the Philadelphia Zoo that shows man entering a lion cage and being killed by the animals. Reporters on television announce that the government has given up the idea of a terrorist attack. The event takes place in Northeast and extends to smaller cities. At that moment, the power goes out and people panic, so everyone starts running in their cars. Elliot and Alma try to ask for help, but everyone ignores him. Luckily, an older couple who run a gardening business invite them to come along, so Elliot is named, and Alma is Juliana. However, Julian has lost contact with his wife and wants to find her, so he leaves just with Elliot and Alma and then leaves with his family, who travel to Princeton. A few moments later, the couple stops at their house to gather supplies, and the husband tells Elliot that he thinks it's the plants that spread chemicals that kill people. Meanwhile, Julian's group reaches Princeton and finds that the area is also infected. There are a lot of bodies hanging from the trees on the road, and the girl in the car is panicking, so Julian has her look at him and do a math problem to distract her. As he speaks, he notices a hole in the roof of the car. Suddenly, the car stops and after a pause crashes into a tree. Julian gets out of the car and uses the broken glass to get away. As they return to Elliot's group, they drive away and hear on the radio that the latest theory is about water pollution. When they get out of town and reach the countryside, they find the road blocked by a bunch of bodies, so they start diving backward. However, when they reach the intersection, they find cars coming from the other roads too, including an army truck. All the drivers report that those roads also lead to lots of bodies blocking the way, meaning they're surrounded by the toxin in every direction. Elliot tries calling Julian, but he won't answer. Then he notices that Alma has lost calls from Joey, so he asks her who he is, but Alma answers nobody. Hearing people in other cars share that the event always starts in parks, Elliot thinks the plant theory may be true after all. At this point, Ms. manages to contact her daughter in Princeton, who reports that everyone in the town is dead. The call ends when the girl suddenly dies and Elliot hears the wind blowing into Girl S' room. Elliot then realizes that Julian is most likely dead and must break the news to Jess to comfort her during her breakdown. Afterwards, the army soldier and Elliot agree that S attacks are in densely populated areas and they need to get off the streets. The crowd of people splits into two groups and begins crossing the countryside to reach a small, remote location, a town nearby that may be safe as it is still under development. As they walk, Alma finally tells Elliot about Joey. He was a coworker she had dinner with when she had to work late. Nothing happened, but she felt guilty about the lie and pulled away. Suddenly, the wind blew and the large group froze. The soldier then moves back and uses the weapon to destroy himself. Elliot's small group can hear how the gun keeps shooting over and over, meaning the others, including the nursery couple, are using it to end things too. As the small group starts to panic, Elliot yells at them to shut up and uses a scientific deduction method to analyze the evidence he has so far and reach a conclusion. He thinks the toxin is indeed being spread by the plants, but it's only triggered by large groups of people, so they need to split into smaller groups. 3 smaller groups result from this, and they all begin running in different directions. Elliot, Alma, and Jess run away with 2 teenage boys, but no matter how fast they move, the wind soon catches up to them. Her group stops to shield their faces, and the wind blows around them, but luckily nothing happens. Elliot believes this confirms that group size matters. After long days, the group finally finds a small town and hides in a house where everything is just for show. There's a plant in the room and Elliot slowly walks up to it and asks to treat it well before realizing it's a plastic plant and he's an idiot. After a pause, decides to leave before more people come here to hide and activate the toxin. As they climb hill, they see 2 groups arrive, forming a large crowd that immediately freezes them. Only one in people tries to start a commercial lawnmower, killing them within seconds. Elliot's group follows the number for hours and finds a radio on the fence. The emergency message states that people should go to the western border to be picked up by the police. Eventually, group is too tired and hungry to continue running. When they find a boarded-up house, they decide to stop there. As they walk, Elliot makes up a story about the employee he flirted with, which makes Alma feel better, even if it's a lie. The group knocks on the front door, but no one comes out. They consider entering by force, but at that moment they see people entering. Elliot politely asks for help, but when the owner refuses them, the teenagers become aggressive, use obscene language, and shake the boards on the windows. The owner is angered and shoots through the hole in the window, killing both teenagers instantly. Frightened, the trio begins to run again. Meanwhile, in various buildings around the area, the survivors are shown making different decisions, with some of them wearing masks and the other collecting as many weapons as they can. On television, a reporter interviews a scientist who explains that the attacks are becoming more violent by the hour and are affecting smaller groups of people. A few moments later, Elliot's group finds a house with no power or a broken road, which is why they assume it is abandoned. However, as they get closer, they meet Mrs. Jones, who chose many years ago will have no contact with the rest of the world. She agrees to let them stay the night and share food, but doesn't want to know anything about the incident and asks them not to talk about it. Mrs. Jones is a very strange lady. One minute she's being nice, the next she's slapping Jess in the face for accepting the cookies she offered herself. Later that evening, Elliot and Alma talk in whispers because Jess is sleeping. Mrs. Jones overhears them and accuses them of trying to kill or rob them. In the morning, Elliot goes looking for Mrs. Jones to tell her something and is shocked to find a creepy doll on her bed instead. As he approaches, Mrs. Jones appears behind him and yells at him, calling him a thief and ordering him to leave immediately. She then goes to her garden where the wind suddenly begins to blow, forcing Mrs. Jones to return. Elliot sees the and immediately rushes to close all the doors and windows, but Mrs. Jones begins to break the glass rather painfully until she dies. As the wind begins to blow inside, Elliot runs through the house trying to find Alma and Jess. Somehow he hears her, but he can't find her. He thinks he hears them in the basement, but when he enters, he is alone. Alma and Jess are actually outside in the old stone spring house, and both buildings are connected by a voice line. Elliot uses this tube to tell them that the toxin now appears to be released by only one person. After exchanging a few kind words and memories, Elliot decides that he doesn't want to die alone and goes outside. Soon Alma and Jess come out and everyone is holding hands as the wind blows around them. However, nothing happens and the trio returns to the house, realizing the event is finally over. 3 months later, Alma and Elliot are living happily together while is being raised by Jess. Alma also finds out that she is pregnant and Elliot is overjoyed by the news. On television, a scientist explains that this event was likely a message sent from the planet to warn humanity that they were causing too much damage that they should expect another attack soon. Meanwhile, in the park in France, people begin to freeze and screams can be heard as the wind blows around them. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.